G'day and welcome back to Billionaire Study Notes. My name's Glenn Gillen. Today we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has built such buildings or residential developments such as Trump Tower. He owns many golf courses, built other buildings like Trump International Hotel and Tower. He features prominently, particularly in New York, though he has ventured overseas. As we like to do in this series, we like to look at 5 key focal points or 5 key areas of distinction that sets each of the billionaires up, sets them apart from the masses, and perhaps can be a result of how they've been able to achieve such success. So, as we like to do, we like to look at these key focal points and think how they're distinctive for each of the individual billionaires, and perhaps even mimic such results ourselves. So if we jump straight into it, the first one's focus, the second point's growth, third point's self-reliance, fourth point's branding, and the fifth point's beliefs. So if we jump into focus first, Donald Trump has a keen focus, an unmatchable focus on building a brand. I think any interview he does, he's always talking about his brand and how rich he is and everything about his brand, how good it is, how elite it is. He has a must-win attitude. He's always focused on winning. He has to get the best deal, he has to push harder, he has to be a tough negotiator, he has to get the best deal. He doesn't give up until he wins. He keeps pushing until he wins. He's obsessive, he's driven. This is all his focus on, always pushing to get the best deal, always ensuring that he's the best and he's a step above the rest. His focus is on being the best. He's got to be the best developer, the best negotiator, have the best brand, be the best builder out there. A key point on focus, just to use a clear example of perhaps when his focus waned. In the 90s, when Trump went through, perhaps he'd say, his toughest time throughout his career, he was in $900 million of personal debt, and his company was in over a couple of $1 billion in debt just for the company. He said the reason why he got into such a terrible position was that he took his eye off the ball. Now, if we just reword that, he lost focus. So, to look at someone like Donald Trump, if he loses focus, he's $900 million in debt. So to just determine the value of his focus, it's worth at least $900 million. That'd get him back to breaking even, though he's a multi-billionaire now, so you do the math. Just his focus alone is worth a couple of $1 billion. Point number 2 is growth. He's always thinking big. One of his key traits is thinking big. One of his quotes, he says, if you're thinking anyway, you may as well think big. Now, good quote. Sounds good. It's, a tidy little quote. If you just think about that quickly, whatever you do, you think about something, think about investing, playing sport, doing whatever you're doing. It takes no more effort to think about a crazy achievement, a super high achievement, as it does to just think about a small achievement. He ensures with his growth that he's always growing, he's always pushing, that if someone screws him, he's got to screw them back 10 times as hard. That he doesn't get screwed. That's somewhat of his tough mentality. He tries to depict himself as being tough, perhaps so that people won't screw him, or they'll be hesitant to screw him, and then if they know if they do screw him, he's going to screw them back. So then that helps him to get a much better deal. With his growth, he's always trying to grow, as we've already mentioned. And to do this, the 2 key points in a development for things to go wrong are to go over time and over budget. Now, he limits his downside to ensure he controls the costs, and he makes sure he builds on time and on budget. 2 key critical factors, I've said that a few times, to ensuring a development or any construction project is a success. If we go on to the third point, self-reliance, he's got unmatchable confidence. He backs himself into any scenario, any endeavour he undertakes, whether it's to start up a TV show like The Apprentice, or it's to buy a site in an unfavourable area. So when he first bought the site for Trump Tower, he bought in Manhattan, which at the time everyone was saying was too expensive and had no growth. Though he backed himself, and look what happened. He lives to tell the story. Further on to this backing himself, he's not afraid to have a bit of a blue with someone. Look at when he and Rosie O'Donnell, they'll jump on TV and attack each other. You know, some might say it's childish, but if you just look at it from a different angle, that he's so self-confident, so self-determined, that he will back himself into any endeavour, up to any fight with any person, no matter where it is, no matter what playing field, he'll back himself and have a crack. Same thing happened if you read his book, The Art of the Deal, with the mayor at the time of New York, Ed Koch. He seemed to, throughout that book, he seemed to headbutt him a number of times, and you know, he ended up getting over it and pushing forward and end up winning. But that's just his consistent, persistent attitude. He's huge on self-promotion. Listen, any interview that he undertakes, he's always talking about how good his brand is, how much better it is than the competition. He uses such words as, when he talks about his building, he says that he's got the best site in New York. Now, New York's a huge place, there's millions of buildings there. He says that his is the number one best site. That's debatable, but he believes it in the way he talks. He says how good his site is. He uses words just to describe his Trump Tower as being breathtaking and magnificent, and it's just the self-promotion, the self-belief, and how much he backs himself. And these are just the self-reliance he has in himself, which builds his brand and increases the value of it astronomically. Now, if we move on that same point, the fourth point is branding. The Trump brand has got to be classy, it's rich, it's elegant, it's exclusive, it's tough, it's good quality, it's enviable. This is everything that he does. He pushes into this vision and this brand, to build this brand and to ensure that it is the best. Now, how do you build this sort of brand? It's, you know, one point is self-promotion. So talk the talk. Second point would be walk the walk. You can't back up. Your talk's going to be cheap and worthless if you don't back it up. He backs it up with building good buildings. Though thirdly, piggyback off other brands. Go into the lobby of Trump Tower and look at the brands in there. First of all, it's next to Tiffany's, which already has a brand name up here. He piggybacks off that by being next to it. Other buildings inside Trump Tower feature such as Cartier or Louis Vuitton, and these sorts of exclusive brands that people already depict as high quality. By having them in his buildings, that instantly builds the rapport of his building and steps it up a notch. His branding, again, is all having the best, being a cut above the rest. Everything that they do is exclusive, is expensive, it's rich, it's wealthy, everyone wants to be there, everyone wants to be associated with there. He keeps promoting it and pushing it. Even to prove that, often the buildings that represent the Trump name haven't actually been built by Donald Trump. They, for example, Chinese developers and Asian developers come to New York and want to build these buildings and make an investment there, though they don't have the name. So what do? They pay Trump for the use of his name because he's already got a pre-established brand. They build the building, slap Trump's name on it, pay him a fee, everyone wins. And the fifth and final point is beliefs. All billionaires have strong beliefs. They're a cut above the rest. They push harder, they play harder, they negotiate harder, and this all comes down to their beliefs. They've got so much self-confidence that no one can deter them. And that's the reason why there's, in one of Trump's audio books titled Think Like a Billionaire, he says, of the 6 billion people in the world, only 597 of them are billionaires. Now, how do you get there? You've got to believe differently. You've got to believe different things. You've got to act differently. He must promote himself as the best. These are the beliefs that Donald Trump has. Never pay too much for a site, never pay too much for a building, never pay too much for anything. That the worst of times equal the best of opportunities. A lot of billionaires think this way. And that it's not about the hours you work, it's the quality of time you put in and what you achieve in that time. Now, if we just recap the 5 key focal points of Donald Trump: firstly, focus; number 2 is growth; number 3 is self-reliance; number 4 is branding; and the 5th and final point is self-belief, that you can do whatever you want, you can do what you set out to do. My name's Glenn Gillen, this is Billionaire Study Notes. Let's change our lives.